speaker, which is Kate Dutton-Regester, who is the Ecology Research Officer for the Australian Pet Welfare Foundation. She, I think she's also a vet, isn't she? Dr. Kate, I should say. Background in wildlife reproduction and veterinary epidemiology. So she leads the Pet Welfare Foundation's Ecology Research Team, overseeing camera monitoring and cat tracking to evaluate the impact of released cats. And she's also a lecturer at the University of Queensland. So thank you, Kate.
Thank you. I'll just try and share my screen appropriately. Hang on a minute.
It's done.
There we go. All right. So yes, thank you. Thanks for having me today. And yeah, there's been some really excellent talks so far. Really enjoying the program. And today I'm going to finish this off with a talk about domestic cats and our urban wildlife. So we've all seen in the headlines these talks about cats, they're natural born killers. Staggering stats, cats kill billions of animals a year. And domestic cats, they kill billions of animals every year. Then keep cats indoors, say researchers. We found they kill 230 million native Australian animals each year. And the domestic cats are wreaking havoc on our environment. So where these information is coming from is basically from 4 papers that have been aimed at estimating the number of prey caught by feral, pet, and semi-owned and unowned cats. So these stats that are coming out, they're not necessarily from just our pet cats. It's also coming from feral cats, the data being used, then extrapolated to pet cats. And hopefully what we've come to understand is that these populations actually behave quite differently. And is it really fair to be placing these assumptions and using this data on our pet cats? So there's a few papers about recently from an author, Wojnarski, and then Murphy as well, who are estimating the number of birds, the number of mammals, the number of reptiles, and the number of frogs and reptiles that are impacted by cats. So again, reiterating, not specifically pet cats, but also talking about feral cats. But yet we get these headlines in the newspapers saying, lock your pet cats up, they're killing billions of animals a year. So each of these studies that have been published recently are all based on just 6 publications using 4 different studies. And these studies were designed to determine the relative proportion of prey observed to be caught by cats and the number caught per cat that predated. So they're not looking at cats generally across the board. They're targeting cats that have predated and then using those numbers of prey caught by those particular cats. So they've used surveys, so people responding to a questionnaire. And as you can see, from 1989 to 1994, this data is quite outdated. Data was collected across Canberra, Hobart, and South Australia. So what did they find from this research on pet cats? So a paper by Barrett, 2 papers, was actually a well-conducted and written paper for its design, and it was peer-reviewed. He selected homes bordering nature reserves in Canberra and ornithological groups. They did door knocking and letter box drops, and they ended up surveying data from 135 cat owners who recorded observations of prey their cats caught. They also collected samples of prey caught from 138 cats. Another reference that's been used to come up with these more recent publications that are estimating prey caught by cats, they, in this pattern paper, used 3 references, and they published a 2-page publication in Bird Observer in 1990 and this data was not peer-reviewed. And then it ended up being republished in a workshop and conference proceeding. So again, just the same data published in a different location. How their data was collected is quite unclear, possibly a mail out, but not well presented as to how they actually did that. And this was presented to ornithological groups in South Australia. And again, a pretty old study. Data was collected from 709 people on what pet cats were observed to catch. Then another study by Truman, again, an unpublished honours thesis from Tasmania. So this is not even available online or in full. They did door-to-door and telephone surveys of what 166 pet cats were observed to catch. And then Wojnarski himself even said, resulting from this data, it was particularly hard to interpret. The results or the data, they're pretty obscure. So for our birds, what did these studies actually find? So Barrett, who selected homes bordering nature reserves and ornithological groups in Canberra, they found that cats predated a median of 1.2 birds a year, or a mean of 2.5 birds a year. So he concluded that median numbers of prey estimated to be caught per year are approximately half the mean values and are actually a better representation of the average predation by house cats. Estimates of predation by house cats, particularly extrapolated estimates, should be treated with caution, he says. Predation estimates alone do not prove that prey populations are detrimentally affected, especially in highly disturbed and modified environments, such as suburbs. He goes on to say, irrespective of the accuracy of predation estimates, without measurements of abundance and population dynamics of prey species, the impact of predation by house cats remains uncertain. So the study by Patton, who surveyed 709 people in South Australia, so the 2-page publication, not peer-reviewed, they found that cats caught on average 8 birds a year. And then Truman, in the unpublished thesis, found 3.3 birds per year. So what Wojnarski has done in his paper is then calculate the average of these 3 studies and determine that cats catch on average 4.5 birds per year. So remembering this study was not designed to determine the proportion of cats which actually predate. He multiplied the 4.5 birds per year by 3 because owners only observe about 30% of what is actually caught by cats. And calculated on average that cats catch 15.6 birds per year, and then multiplied that 15.6 by all 3.88 million pet cats. So this includes your pet cats that are indoors, as well as those that are outdoors, not accounting for age, any of those factors, just all of our pet cats, 3.88 million, all behaving exactly the same, regardless of whether they're indoor, outdoor. So he announced pet cats kill 61 million birds per year. And in this included introduced birds as well. And so when talking to the media, these authors then implied that this translates to a population effect. So this study has assumed that all pet cats catch on average 15.6 birds per year, regardless of their age, regardless of whether they're contained inside. How accurate is this for pet cats? Is it accurate to assume that all pet cats predate? If we were in a nice room together, I'd ask you all, do you own a cat? Have you seen your cat predate? To get a show of hands of what we might observe. And in the past, when Jackie's done this talk, we don't get many people showing a hand that their cat is a hunter and that they're bringing home 15.6 birds a year. So is this a gross overestimation of what our pet cats are actually doing? And does it translate to a population effect? Now, this data that we've been talking about, as I said, it's quite old. It hasn't been peer reviewed, a lot of it. We need some contemporary data, some more reliable data and science. So, as mentioned in my introduction, I work with Jackie at the Australian Pet Welfare Foundation, and one of our key programs is the Community Cat Program. And our whole aim here is to protect people, cats, and wildlife. So the overarching activity is our free desexing program that has been going on for 5 years. And with this, we also do camera trapping, GPS tracking of these cats. And we also conduct a lot of surveys of the people that are bringing these cats to understand their ownership, whether they're considered the owner of the cat or whether they might just consider themselves a semi-owner, and also their caring behaviours for the cat. We currently target low socioeconomic areas, large proportion of renters in these locations. They may lack fly screens, fencing, those sort of things that make it very difficult to contain cats. And they also have high intake of cats into shelters. So the overall aim is to see less of this, so less of these community cat groups, stray, free roaming cats, and more of this, so cats in homes being cared for. And we've been conducting, as I said, a lot of research, and one of them has been phone surveys to people that have started enrolling in the free desexing program. And one of the questions asked is, do you keep your cat contained so that it cannot wander off your property? And of all the people that were questioned, 49% said that they keep their cat indoors contained. And this is very similar to a previous study that found 45% of people also saying that they keep their cat indoors contained. And another survey being conducted is the people that are going through the program. They've had their cat desexed through the Community Cat Program. And this survey is designed to determine the proportion of cats that hunt. So we're not just singling out those cats that do hunt, we're trying to determine how many cats actually hunt. 78% of respondents said that their cat did not hunt or only hunts insects. So 4% of cats only hunted insects. Only 22% of cats were observed to hunt. And of those, only 7% were observed to catch birds. So some more recent data that has been done on sort of understanding what our pet cats do. A study by Bruce in New Zealand was looking at risky and predation behaviours of owned cats, and the cats were wearing cat-borne video cameras around their collar, on their neck, and they had this collar on 37 cats for 3 days. 65% of cats were outdoor all times, and 35% were inside at night. They, as I said, investigated predatory and risky behaviours, so stalking, pursuing, actually capturing prey, fights with other cats, and venturing onto roads and things like that that we perceive as risky. They found that 62% of the cats engaged in 121 predation events. So 23 cats, 121 predation events. 40 of these events resulted in prey capture. 87% were insects and 13% skinks. No mammals, birds, or amphibians were captured. One cat did happen to scavenge a already deceased bird and brought that back. 87% of cats engaged in risky behaviour. And the most common one, I think we've probably all seen, was the cat venturing onto the road. So what might be the reality for our pet cats? Based on contemporary data and cat keeping behaviour, Wojnarski's paper is probably about 15 times overestimating how much our pet cats are capturing wildlife, our prey, native wildlife. Wynorski assumed that all 3.88 million pet cats predate, on average 15.6 birds a year. So 61 million birds caught per cat per year. Sorry, not per cat, 61 million across all owned cats per year. Based on our data, if only 22% of pet cats predate, and only 7% of these predate birds, that's around 4 million birds predated, and that includes introduced species. So it's only about 1/15 of what Wynorski has calculated. And studies are showing that around 73% of birds caught are native. So not all of what cats are capturing are native species. So if we consider that, it's around 3 million native birds per year caught by cats. So that number is a lot smaller than 61 million birds caught by cats per year, if we consider that a lot of cats are kept indoors and that not all cats predate. Now, if we think about stray cats, so these can be our cats that are in urban areas, but they're not owned, they might be semi-owned. The effects of stray cats are extrapolated from just 5 studies. So again, a very small pool of data. 3 were from rubbish dumps in rural towns. And 1 even stated that they only analysed samples to count towards evidence of wildlife remains. And they purposely excluded those fecal samples that did not contain items that they were specifically looking for. So if they didn't contain remains of feathers, bones, you know, what you might expect to see if a cat had been eating birds, they disregarded that. 8 parks in Greater Melbourne were investigated, but again, only if the stool had feathers, hair, bones. And they concluded that stray cats catch 61.5 birds per cat per year. And so they've assumed that all 0.7 million stray and unowned cats living in highly modified environments predated similarly to those samples analysed. So these results aren't really representative of the vast majority of stray cats, because we know that a large proportion of stray cats are semi-owned. They do get fed by a well-meaning human who wants to feed this cat that is hanging around their home. So our conclusion on birds from the evidence, it appears quite flawed for the number of birds killed by pet and stray cats from these papers by Wynorski and Murphy. And no population effect has actually been investigated, but it has been implied in the media, resulting in these alarming headlines that cats are killing millions, if not billions, of animals a year. So what evidence do we have of a population effect? Now, there's been some studies looking at association between cats and wildlife. This study by Grayson was conducted in Perth, looking at 57 sites across metropolitan Perth and looking at associations between cats and passerine birds. They investigated factors affecting passerine bird community composition, and they found no link between cat density and passerine bird species richness. There was actually a decreasing bird population with increasing housing density and with increasing distance from bushland. And habitat destruction and degradation were the critical factors, not cats. Another study looking at bird nests in Sydney bushland, they looked at predation of bird nests, bird eggs and nests in 24 forest patches through Sydney metropolitan region. They found avian predators attacked all patches. Black rats attacked nests in 10 areas. No nests were attacked by cats. And reduced nest predation was actually associated with higher cat activity. So that's from a paper from Matthews in 1999. More research coming out investigating diversity and abundance of birds in urban forests. They're hypothesizing that bird biodiversity would be positively affected by the amount and quality of native forest, and then negatively affected by rats, possums, and cats. They found avian richness increased when composition was most similar to undisturbed forests. No surprise there. However, contrary to their prediction, invasive mammals such as our cats had no significant effect on native bird species richness and abundance. They hypothesized then that avian species remaining in urban forests and cities coped with predation, but habitat restoration is important. So why do we get this disparity between reports of how many birds are killed and then this population effect? As Jackie mentioned, cats are opportunists, and this has been shown in research, 2 studies, one from UK and then one from France, showing that birds killed by cats were less healthy than birds killed by cars and flying into windows. They've used validated measures of measuring bird health, so splenic mass and body condition, and they concluded that cats are opportunistic hunters, like our cat in the other study that brought back a previously deceased bird. They tend to remove sick, old, and birds that have fallen from nests. So these birds would unlikely have contributed to the next breeding season. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds in the UK have even released a statement saying, despite the large number of birds killed, there is no scientific evidence that predation by cats in gardens is having any impact on bird populations UK-wide. It is likely that most of the birds killed by cats would have died anyway from other causes before the next breeding season, so cats are unlikely to have a major impact on populations. So what about our mammals? Again, these papers that are coming out talking about cats killing billions of wildlife, billions of mammals, they're based on the same 6 studies from 4 data collections designed to determine the relative proportion of prey observed to be caught by stray and pet cats. They're not designed to determine the proportion of cats which predate. And they've concluded, or they've estimated, that 8.6 mammals per year are caught by cats, multiplied by 5, as we only observe around 20% of the catch, and calculated that cats catch on average 46 mammals per year. Again, multiplied that number by the whole 3.88 million pet cats, again, regardless of some of our cats being entirely indoors. And also reporting that most, so 98% of mammals caught by pet cats, sorry, this is from another study, Barrett, finding that 98% of mammals that are being caught by cats are actually introduced mammals, so rats, mice, rabbits, not our native Australian species. And again, another paper finding that 97% of mammals caught by cats were our mice, rats, rabbits. So is there evidence for a population effect on native mammals in urban areas? In a Perth study, they investigated the number and diversity of native mammals across 3 bushland sites and compared 3 areas for around 10 years. One area had cats completely banned from the area. The second area required cats to be inside overnight and to wear a bell. And the third site had no regulation on cat activity. They could do whatever you please, in, out, anytime, day, night. And what they found, the numbers of our most abundant medium-sized mammals were similar across all 3 sites. So our brush-tailed possums, southern brown bandicoots, similar across all 3 sites, regardless of cat activity. And our smaller, so our antechinus, which are highly susceptible to cat predation, were more present at the unregulated cat site. So where the cat could be present day and night, anytime. Total mammals caught at the unregulated site exceeded other sites, but the vegetation was denser there. They concluded that pet cats are not a major influence on species diversity or abundance of small and medium-sized mammals, and that vegetation characteristics are far more important. Another study looking specifically at bandicoots in Melbourne, so the southern brown bandicoot abundance, they found this was higher in peri-urban areas compared with nature reserves. Presence was highest at sites with most urbanised surroundings, so cats were also very prevalent. And there was lower abundance in nature reserves where the cats were actually quite absent from the area. Another study from Brisbane City Council, they've been looking at analysing the stomach contents of cats. So they've looked at 50 cats that were captured, and unfortunately, they were unable to actually find any evidence in the stomach contents of these 50 cats of evidence of them having consumed Australian native wildlife. The only prey species consumed was a black rat. Another study similarly looking at the stomach and colon samples from cats killed in pounds. They also found similar story. Cat food, house mouse, and carrion is what they were finding in the stomach contents of these cats, not species of conservation concern. These were not found in the stomach contents of these cats that were killed in a pound. And our reptiles, again, these papers based on those same 6 studies from 4 data sets, owners observed an average of 3 reptiles per year. Again, we only see about 22% of the catch. So they've extrapolated this to 13.6 per year. So 63 million reptiles per year. So Wojnarski has even said in his paper, however, much of the interpretation of these results are constrained by shortcomings in evidence. Our study did not seek to assess whether predation by cats is leading to chronic ongoing depletion in the standing crop of Australian reptiles. And Barat has also commented that vertebrate species that successfully invade suburban environments are likely to be mobile and widespread, while species in surrounding habitats may be relatively immobile and patchily distributed. In other words, they're doing quite fine in those areas. So we knock down land, we build houses, we create cities, and then we have our pet cats, and we love to point the finger at the cat. Look what the cats did. So, as introduced, my background is in wildlife. I'm very passionate about wildlife conservation. I also love cats. And wildlife conservation, we need to be thinking about it smartly, and protecting species of conservation concern should be the first priority. And our cats, our pet cats, part of this story. We need to continue collecting contemporary data, and we need to be doing it with good science. We need to keep building that evidence and looking at a range of cats and accounting for cats that are kept indoors versus those that are outdoors. It's not good science to be extrapolating from that total population of pet cats when a big chunk of them are not going outdoors. We need to get better estimates of what cats are actually doing. So, as mentioned before, at the Australian Pet Welfare Foundation, we have the Community Cat Program. So it's a free desexing program for owned and semi-owned cats, and it's been going on for 5 years and continuing. And the aim is to increase desexing rate of stray cats, of owned and stray cats, in effort to reduce the number of stray cats. And as I mentioned, we're targeting low socioeconomic areas as they seem to be highly problematic areas with high cat intake to pound. So some studies that we have, the community cat program is our overarching program, and then beneath this we have a range of research projects. So one is camera trap data. We're putting out camera traps and looking at whether, or the efficacy of the free desexing. Are free roaming cat numbers declining over time? We're putting tracking colours on these semi-owned cats to see how far they roam, because there's some backlash that if they're desexed, they'll go bush and then start going on a killing spree. Is that the reality? Is that what they're going to do or are doing? Camera trap data is also being used to look at the relationship between cats, our pet cats, wildlife and landscape. Video camera collars on the cats, how much do they actually predate? And we do a lot of surveys to understand cat containment and predation and risk factors for predation, so we can better estimate that number of damage that cats may or may not be doing, looking at the risk factors for that to include those in our models of estimation. And we also do surveys to understand how cats are cared for and that transition of semi-owners to full ownership. So I'm just going to finish off today giving a brief summary of these research projects that we have ongoing. So our first one, are the number of free roaming cats declining over time? So this is associated with the free desexing. We want to see, is the implementation of this free desexing effective in reducing free roaming cat numbers and pound shelter intake? So we put out camera traps in our target suburbs, which are Rosewood, Redbank Plains and Goodna in the city of Ipswich in Queensland. We put 50 cameras out per suburb, so a total of 150 cameras, and they're placed approximately 200 metres apart. And they're deployed for 2 weeks per location every summer and winter. The project started in June 2000, and we have our 10th deployment starting in summer of 2025. And we use a program called EcoAssist to help us clean those images so that we can remove non-animal related images. And we are in progress of discussing how to analyse this, but we're looking at ecological modelling and N mixture models. So these are our 3 different locations and roughly how the cameras are distributed. They do shift and change around a little bit. As mentioned, a lot of the people that live in these locations are renters, so there is changeover in who's living in the house, and the new tenant or owner may not want the camera there, so there is sometimes slight adjustment. Generally, it's within a few houses of its original location, so the movement isn't too large. And these are some of the images that we capture on these cameras. So if you can see in that first image, the cat is just in front of what we call a lure. So it's just a stick. It's got some feathers on top, and we do place a fish oil, the contents of a fish oil capsule on a little leather platform in effort to attract the cats to come to the camera. We also get the wildlife, so our nighttime friends come out, and we also see a lot of birds. So I've done a very rough count of the cats that we've been observing across some of the deployments. We haven't yet analysed the very, I guess, baseline data yet, just because there's an awful lot of images there, because the camera was set to trigger for a lot more images, and it was also out for 4 weeks rather than 2. So we're sort of backtracking to get on top of that. However, the data that we do have, starting from deployment 3 through to deployment 6, across all suburbs, you can see there is a nice decline in the number of cat observations that we're getting. And that trend is generally observable across each suburb individually as well. So another part of the program is tracking the semi-owned cats, or what they're also termed restricted matter cats. So these are the cats that they're not owned by someone specifically, but they may be semi-owned, so they may be receiving some form of care from humans, and typically that's in the capacity of food. So what we want to understand is how much are these cats moving around? And so we've been putting tracking collars on some of the cats, and we're finding that they generally stick around that home base. They don't really travel too far from there. Yes, there are some little adventures outside of that little bubble, but 95% of their home range is within 0.2 to 0.4 hectares of that home base. So if you don't really work in hectares, like I don't, 0.2 of a hectare is about the size of 4 basketball courts. So 0.4 is about double of that, just to give you some perception of how large that space is that the cat is traversing. On another cat, this cat a little more adventurous, taking a lot more daily trips. And I should say, sorry, the different colors. Each color is representing a different week. So that's their week by week activity over 6 weeks. But again, 95% of their home range is within that 0.2 to 0.4 hectare range. So again, the cats are opportunists. They've got a food there, they're getting provision of food. They're quite happy to stay there near that food source. Now, another really major paper that we're hoping to really get off the ground this year is the association between cats, wildlife, and land use. So we want to determine, like these other papers have done and started showing, what factors predict wildlife species presence, absence, richness, and abundance. And our target is these suburbs in Ipswich. So we're looking at pet cat density or free roaming cat density, dog density, housing density, garden composition, and proximity and size of remnant bushland. So we're going to start pulling this data together, build models to try and get some answers there as to what is really influencing wildlife presence in suburbia. And it's the same methods as our previous study I was talking about. So it's the camera trap observations across these 3 target suburbs, 150 cameras per deployment, spaced 200 meters apart. They're out for 2 weeks, summer and winter. And again, looking at this ecological modeling to help us model what factors are most important to wildlife presence, absence, and whether cats are actually a major risk factor in that. So the data for this is ongoing, and we're, as I said, currently in the process of starting to put that together and analyze it. A more newer study that we've started is looking at predatory and risky behaviours of free roaming owned cats. So we want to monitor the frequency of predatory and risky behaviours and determine how far our owned pet cats are travelling from their home, and explore predictors of predatory and risky behaviours. So looking at age, sex, outdoor access, proximity to bushland. And we also want to explore the owner's perception of their cat's behaviours versus reality. So this will be a really unique study in that putting the cat camera on and letting the cat go out and explore, do its everyday thing. What that brings back is going to tell us what that cat is getting up to. Is it out hunting and catching those 15.6 birds? Or is it at home, looking out the window, having a nap, just watching the world go by? Versus what the owners think that their cat's doing. So I think that's going to be a really interesting study to look at how we perceive what our cats do versus what is the reality. So this study, we're looking at using a video camera. We're still exploring what video camera we're going to use. There's an example there of what we are currently looking at using, but we're going to look at around 70 cats, probably a 50-50 split male-female, a good mix of age, and we're looking at cats that do go outdoors to see what these outdoor cats are actually doing. So each video camera will be worn by each cat for over 2 days. We're currently looking to see if we can combine the tractor with the GPS tracker with the video cam. If that's the case, we may try and get more GPS tracking done over the cat over multiple days to see how far the cat is roaming from their home. And then a questionnaire to elicit what owners perceive their cats do in terms of predation, risky behaviours, how much does your cat sleep, when does it go outside, those sorts of details. So I hope this has really presented what the data is, you know, where those claims in the newspapers are coming from, that cats are killing millions, billions of wildlife, that the data that has been used for that is outdated, it's not very scientific, heavily biased, and we really need to do better by cats and by wildlife to get more evidence-based scientific research. We need to be conducting that and get much better estimates of what cats are actually doing to see if they are having that population effect on wildlife. If they are, great, we can implement appropriate measures. And if they're not, we need to, you know, reallocate resources and funding and those sorts of things to where it's more needed to help our wildlife. And thank you. That's the end.